we can catch them up. Looks like we got a couple more people coming in right now. So, and we got a pretty good group here. So appreciate everyone taking the time to join us here online today. So just to make sure everybody's in the right place, this is the Division 512 rulemaking meeting. This is RAC meeting number 13. This is an abbreviated version where we're going to address a couple of the items and from our anticipated upcoming agenda and move the remainder to an in-person meeting in April. And we've added an additional meeting in May, but Kelly will kind of go over that here when we get started as far as what the next steps look like. So let's go ahead and get into it, and we can begin with some introductions. So again, this is all online. Everybody joining us is online. So we'll what I'll do is go first have RAC members introduce themselves. I'm just going to call your name as I see them here on my screen, and then let's go ahead and state your name if you're representing any organization, and then I'll call the next person. Keep yourself muted if you can, unless you are speaking. So let's start from the top of my list. John Short, go right ahead.
John Short, water rate consultant, RAC member.
Thank you. Barbara Howard.
You're muted, Barbara.
So Barbara, we got you here. So we'll move on. If you do get unmuted, feel free to introduce yourself.
Is that better?
Yep, we got you now.
Barbara Howard, RAC member.
Thank you. Let's see, who do we have with us from High Desert Partnership? Brenda, can you do some introductions for me with the folks there in the room?
Sure. We'll go around the room. Brenda Smith, RAC member. Andy
Root, RAC member.
Chad Carcass, High Desert Partnership.
Louis Malt, RAC member.
Kurt Blackburn, real estate broker and irrigator. Jake Blackburn, local.
Okay, that's the room here.
Great, thank you. Karen Moon.
RAC member and with the Harney County Watershed Council.
Thank you. Ken Beerley.
Ken Beerley, consultant to the Watershed Council.
Kristen Shellman.
Kristen Shellman, Harney County resident, RAC member.
Thank you. Larissa.
Larissa Singhose, a RAC member.
Mark.
Thanks. Had trouble finding mute. Mark, RAC member, community member.
Thank you. Rob Frank.
Rob Frank, Harney County Commissioner, RAC member representing the Harney County Court.
Okay, and there's Zach.
Good morning, Zach Freed with the Nature Conservancy.
Okay, I think that we have a lot of people here.
One more, Ben McKenna.
Oh, Ben, sorry about that. Yeah, jumped in after. Ben, if you can unmute and you can introduce yourself. Looks like you're still muted, but that's all right. We can we see you there and appreciate you joining. Okay, did I miss anybody? If you can use the raise hand function, if you're a RAC member and I didn't call on you, that would be great. There's everybody's screen looks a little different potentially depending on which version of Zoom you're using, but there should be a function in the lower right, or you can typically right click on your name or excuse me. No, that may not work either. So anyways, if you have the ability, you can also just make sure your camera's on and put your hand up, and I'll be keeping my eye on the screen if you do have if I was unable to get to you here today in the introductions, but I think I captured everybody. So as far as additional introductions, my name is Brian Keekley. I'm with the Langdon Group. I'm the third-party neutral facilitator helping to manage the process here today. I have another member of the Langdon Group here with me that's going to take notes. Angela, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yep. I'm Angela Singleton. And I can help too with tech stuff if you want to message me.
Yeah, that would be great. Appreciate that. Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you want to maybe take the lead and just kind of hand it off to another person with the OWRD so we can get a head count of everybody that's here with the department.
Yep, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Kelly Mines, water policy analyst, rule writer, and coordinator for this rulemaking process. I'll throw it over to Jason next.
Morning, everyone. Jason Spreet, East Region Manager for Water Resources.
Dark, you want to go next?
Yes, good morning. Dark Boschman. I'm a hydrogeologist with the department.
Tim.
Hello, everybody. Tim Seymour. I'm the assistant manager for the groundwater section here at the department.
Alexandria.
Morning, everyone. Alexandria Scott with Water Resources Department. I'm the East Region Community Engagement Coordinator.
Thank you. Rachel.
Thanks, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Levelford. I'm the manager for the surface water section, but relevant to this meeting, I am covering our water use reporting topics today. Thanks.
Ben.
Morning, everyone. I'm Ben Scandella with the groundwater section, and I've been running the numerical model.
And then Laura.
Hi, Laura Hart, water policy analyst, and I need to leave my camera off because my internet is a mess. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you. So yeah, thank you all for joining us. We have a lot of members of other folks here today that are with the public, and we appreciate you being here. We'll talk a little bit here in a second about your role in this meeting and when you'll have opportunity to share comments if you have them. So Kelly, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So just some ground rules for everybody. You're here to express your viewpoint and treat each other respectfully. You know, the value of a group like this with different perspectives and interests is that we have the opportunity to hear those other interests and perspectives, but we ask that we're respectful and we hear those and consider the comments that everybody provides. Use a raise hand feature to indicate that you'd like to speak. I mentioned depending on the version of Zoom that you have, it may look a little different, but typically at the bottom, there's a react. On my screen, there's a heart, and you click on that, and then there's a button that pops up in that box that says raise hand. So the easiest thing to manage a meeting such as this online is to use that function if you do have a question or comment as a member of the RAC, and I will make sure that I answer that question in the order it was received. As Angela mentioned, if you do want to put something in the chat, she can keep an eye on that and bring that to my attention that there's a question or a comment there as well. But again, please limit that to RAC members. For members of the public, we have one public comment period time held on the agenda, and we'll show you where that is when we get to that. If time allows, we could potentially do some additional comments at the end of the meeting, but again, that'll just be if we have capacity in our agenda to do that. So again, just a reminder, RAC, the participation in the meeting, questions in the meeting are for RAC participants only. The public will have their opportunity to comment at that designated time. Okay, next slide. So again, just operating guidelines, attend and participate in meetings at the Horseshoe or online. Today, we're just online is the role of the RAC, provide input, advice, and help the department consider the various perspectives that exist from the RAC members. And the role of the public is to listen only during the presentations and RAC discussions and provide input and advice during the designated comment time. Okay, next slide. So the role of the department, foster meaningful dialogue and conversation, consider RAC and public input and feedback, and draft the final rules. My role as the neutral facilitator is to foster meaningful dialogue and conversations by all RAC participants and ensure everybody has a safe space to express their viewpoints in a respectful environment. So here's our agenda today. We're going to, I'll turn it over to Kelly here in a moment to provide an update on the schedule and sort of where we're headed from now until the conclusion of this RAC process. And then the two big agenda items today are the SWAMPA rule language and classification rule language. That's what we want to kind of go over the feedback that's been received so far and the changes that the department made in response to those, and get any additional input that you have for each section of those rules. As I mentioned, we have a public comment period scheduled at 11:10, so we'll try to hold that to that time as much as possible. We want people to be able to, members of the public that want to provide comment, to be able to commit to that time and know that we'll be doing it then. So we may be a little bit late, but we won't do that early. If there's time after classification rule language and before next steps, we may be able to squeeze in another comment or two. So I guess at this time, and I'll check again when we get to the conclusion of our SWAMPA rule language, but at this time, if you're a member of the public and you do anticipate wanting to provide comment, if you could let me know, you can raise your hand or you can just put a message in the chat and let us know when you would like to do it, or if you don't have a preference. That'll give us a little bit of a head count as to when we can expect comments to be provided and how much time we need to allot for that. So again, if you're with the public, you anticipate you're going to want to provide comment, let me know if you'd like to do it at which time, and that would be helpful. Okay. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So goals for today's meeting, again, is provide kind of an update of the RAC schedule. We did some reshuffling, so I just want to give you guys an update and what it kind of looks, what the schedule looks like going forward through 2025. Then kind of gather more input on our SWAMPA rule language. We discussed this about a month ago in our virtual meeting extension, SWAMPA rule language. We've made adjustments to that rule language, so give you guys more space to provide more input, and then also gather input around our classification rule language as well. So without further ado, let's get into our update on schedule. So we've got, starting on the left here, we've got 2 more RAC meetings planned. We moved the critical groundwater area portion of the conversation to our April 2nd RAC. And we'll kind of delve a little bit into what we're going to be covering each of these RACs the next couple of slides here. So we have RAC number 14 is going to be April 2nd, and RAC number 15 will be May 15th. At the Harney County Community Center. Both will be a hybrid option at Harney County Community Center, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And so after that 15th meeting, we will initiate the public comment period June 1st. And so how the public comment is initiated, there's lots of things we have to do. One, we have to notify all groundwater users within the affected critical groundwater area. So we'll be mailing a notification to you all. We'll also be kicking off the public comment by posting in what we call the Oregon Bulletin, which is essentially a place where we put the rule language, the physical impact statement, statement of need, and racial equity. And it is a signal to all of Oregon that these rules are open for public comment. And so we're planning roughly 2 months and a little bit of change public comment. And right now we have planned 3 public hearings, August 4th, August 5th, and August 6th. This isn't all that we're planning. We're currently in kind of the phase, we are currently thinking about what engagement's going to look like with those 2 months of public comment. And as soon as we figure out that, we'll let you all know. Once the public hearings are over, the public comment ends August 7th here. And that's when we start preparing our draft staff report to the Water Resources Commission. We're going to go radio silent at this point. You won't hear from us for 3 months, or a little over under 3 months. We're preparing our draft staff report here, and within that staff report would be the new rule language that may or may not have been changed based off comments received during the public comment phase. It will contain the comments received and then responses to that. And we will be posting that hypothetically around 11:27. I say hypothetically because that's a long ways away, but the final report will be posted. And then from there, we have a Water Resources Commission meeting on December 11th or 12th. And we will ask our commission to vote to adopt the rules. So that's the rulemaking schedule for this rulemaking. Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, Kelly. I just wondering if possible that maybe we have another RAC meeting after the rules have been revised, just to update the RAC on what had happened during the comments prior to going to the commission.
Yeah, we'll take that in note. I can't promise anything right now, but we'll take that in note. Thanks, Mark.
I understand. Thanks.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments? And you'll be seeing this slide a couple times and we'll discuss what the public comment period looks like here. So for RAC schedule again, April 2nd, 2025 is our next RAC. It's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Harney County Community Center. And then the following would be May 15th, 2025, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. as well. And then from there again, we kick off our public comment period June 1. So in terms of expected topics, so like I said, the April meeting, the primary topics that we're covering is really this management scenario that we've been discussing for the Harney Basin critical groundwater area. And so we'll be discussing the management scenario, including that would be implementation and adaptive management. And so we, over the past couple of months, in terms of management scenario, we've been processing really all the written comments that we received. So thank you all to those who either sent written comments or participated in a discussion group and filled out the Google form. We worked on processing those comments and adjusting where we deem necessary for this management scenario. We've also have been working on what implementation looks like. And when they say implementation, we're talking things like determining the actual use. We're talking the schedule of reductions, test a case, and then engagement post rule adoption. So really the adaptive management, what happens after rule adoption. All of that is being written in rules right now, and we'll get to you guys that in a couple of weeks, the rule language. And as far as the physical impact as well, we have sent Echo Northwest is preparing the final physical impact, and we may have those numbers by April 2nd. I can't promise anything right now. We still need to coordinate with Echo. As far as the May meeting, it's going to be rule language. So we're going to be just circling back to the swamper rule language and classification rule language and critical ground area rule language, as well as focusing on the physical impact.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Any other questions about next steps and the intent of our next two meetings? Okay.
Go ahead, Larissa's got something. Go ahead.
Yeah, Larissa, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to, I guess, clarify. So in April, are we actually going to start getting, I mean, I know we're getting rule language, but are we actually going to get what the regulations are going to be anytime?
Are you talking about specifically like reductions in the PTW?
Yes, that kind of stuff. Yes.
Yes, you will be getting those. Mm-hmm. Is there okay, sorry, that pause tells me, is there something that I'm not answering?
No,
Okay.
no, you got it. I just hit a wrong button, so I was trying to figure out what to do.
Okay, thank you, Larissa. I
Thank
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a question here at HTP.
This is Andy. So Kelly, all the decisions have been made. All you guys are trying to do is put them into a rule form now, so we can see them, correct?
I missed the last part. What was the last part, Andy?
So all the decisions have been made of what the PTWs are going to be. And now all you guys have left to do is put it in a rule form, into the rules form, so we can see them, correct?
Correct, yes, but
So
that's not,
all input at this point means nothing. And we're
no,
done. We're
that is,
done.
that is not what I'm playing. So rule language, we could still have input on how we implement the management scenario. There's still plenty of avenues for input in rule language. So when I say rule language, I'm not saying it's the final, this is what we're doing. This is our draft language. This is what we're thinking. Tell us what your thoughts are. So I
Okay.
apologize if it sounds like I'm saying final. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, you came off mute. Did you have something? Or maybe you're already off mute. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other hands. I did see Jess joined us. Jess, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. Sorry I'm late. I accidentally was on the wrong week on my calendar and tried to join the wrong meeting and was wondering why no one was showing up. But my name is Jess Winnick and I'm the refuge manager here at Malheur Refuge.
No problem. Thanks, Jess. And anybody, I don't think I saw any other RAC members pop in since we began. If you did and you want to use your raise hand function, let me know. We can have you introduce yourself now. I think we're good though. Okay. All right. So that hopefully that helps give everyone an idea of kind of the roadmap ahead and what the anticipated agendas will be very roughly at this point. Obviously, you'll get some more information prior to those meetings to help prepare for those. So let's get into our first significant agenda item here, the SWAMPA draft rule language. Want to go to the next slide. So the goal here, gather input around the draft language, and we're at that consult level on that International Association of Public Participation Spectrum. So still looking for feedback that the department can receive and then consider. So please do provide your input. I think the way this is organized is Kelly will walk through section by section. So we'll try to pause at each one of those sections. If you have comments or questions, you can, again, use your raise hand function and I'll call on you to let you share that. So John, looks like you got your hand up now. Go right ahead.
I'm just not seeing a section that allows open ET for water use reporting.
Yep, that's I know the department is prepared to discuss that, so we'll get to that.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Kelly, take it away.
Okay. So first, kind of want to start this conversation before we dive into the rule language, just kind of talk about the themes of comments that we kind of received from our last virtual extension rack when we talked about SWAMPA. So kind of briefly go through the themes and then kind of at a high level, what does SWAMPA implementation what is it going to look like within the boundary? And then we'll start diving into the rule language weeds. So we've got a myriad of different comments. SWAMPA boundary, we didn't really explicitly discuss this last extension, excuse me, so I got distracted by chat. Last extension, we discussed this in RACs number 6 and 7, and the RAC recommended that we set the boundary as parts of the groundwater study area and then parts of Grant County, mainly around Seneca. And so that was the boundary. So that was a recommendation from the RAC based off our conversations with RAC 7 and 8. And then we received comments around, to John's point, ET, right? And so there is kind of multiple themes. Jason, chime in.
Kelly, you're not sharing your screen right now. I don't know if you're intending to.
Oh, I am intending to.
I'm seeing it.
Oh,
I
you
can
do?
see it.
Okay, I
Yeah.
apologize.
You may have your views switched there, Jason, from speaker
Jason's
to
got his hand
presenter.
up. I don't know.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
We could see it though, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Jason, don't throw a monkey wrench in my process.
Sorry, Kelly. That was my mistake. I apologize, everybody.
It's okay. All right. So back to the kind of the themes of comments. So ET, there are a myriad of different comments. The first was the reported data from flow meters is inaccurate. Flow meters are expensive. And so ET is a way around the expense and the inaccuracies. We have asking irrigators to report annually could be difficult, and ET can circumvent that difficulty. The department can measure use. And then we had other comments that are kind of against ET, saying that ET is just not accurate enough and that we should not be using that for water use reporting. Other comments, so frequency of reporting. We've had one commenter specifically saying that we can use our critical groundwater area statutes, ORS 537.735, section 5. That's a lot of numbers. That one's the broad statute that says that we can implement a corrective control provision that is for health and safety. So it's kind of a broad, we could do within a critical groundwater area. There was an argument that we can require more than annual reporting. In terms of kind of the exceptions for installing flow meters, there's kind of two themes that I have read, and excuse me if I'm missing something, please let me know. But one, in terms of exceptions, right? So is the one where there is a groundwater user or in the basin that in earnest is trying to install a flow meter, and for whatever reason, it just does not work. It will get broken. It's breaking something. It's sucking up dirt. And kind of the other one is around if a groundwater user knows they're going to be regulated off, there should be an exception for them not to install a flow meter. And there was kind of opposite comments to that specific comment, saying that if we are going to write some sort of exception, there needs to be a line, right? If a groundwater user knows they're going to be regulated off in 2028, then they should be required to install a flow meter and report, for example, right? So those are kind of the themes around the exceptions, and we'll get specifically into these comments and how they were incorporated or not incorporated in rule language. Right now, I'm just keeping it high level. And then kind of last, there were general comments around rule language. Example of we were requiring reporting for the water year preceding the report. That didn't make any sense. So just general comments about like some rule language wasn't lining up. And lastly, there were criteria around specifications, our specification section in the rules. There were some comments on that's not possible, or you should rethink that. So that's kind of the general themes that we got from our last meeting, and we used to incorporate and change the rule language when necessary. Great. So again, I'm going to keep it high level and just talk about general implementation, what it's going to look like. Because for me personally, reading through rule language, we kind of lose that narrative thread of, okay, but how is this going to work in the basin? So let's kind of go generally what it's going to look like. So again, this is the Swampa boundary. It is the groundwater study area. And, oh, Rob, go ahead, please.
After looking over the Division 10, let's see, the groundwater report for the Harney Basin, I'm unclear on why the southern region is included in the Swampa if it doesn't meet the criteria.
I'm going to throw that one over to either Jason or Tim, the person, or one of the technical crew, because that's more of a technical question. And we might have to get back to you on that one, Rob.
Yeah, Rob, unless, Tim wants to jump in, I think we'll get back to you on that question. Appreciate it though. It's a great one. I know we've had it earlier, and I don't recall off the top of my head what the criteria were that prompted us to include that section.
So the map here shows, and I assume what you're talking about there, that southern portion is that tip that comes down into the Steens. And what the groundwater report and the groundwater study showed is that the Harney Basin is one groundwater reservoir. And the purpose of including that southern portion is that it is an area of recharge to lower portions in the basin. And we have development down in that southern portion of the basin, and we're seeing groundwater level declines in those areas. So just because that one specific area of the basin hasn't met the criteria that would authorize designation of a critical area doesn't mean that we haven't achieved that or met those thresholds in other portions of the basin. And we want to manage the resource, that groundwater reservoir, as a whole in an effective manner. For the purposes of SWAMPA, or the measurement and reporting requirement, ensuring accountability is important. And so measuring and monitoring use in all portions of the groundwater reservoir are important. And when we talked about this with the RAC originally, it was agreed that if we were going to have a portion of the basin measuring and reporting, that they wanted to include the northern half as well. And there wasn't ever a question discussed about the southern half, as I remember it. But the intent was we need to have measurement and reporting anywhere we're going to do management for accountability purposes.
Rob, does that capture your question, or is there something we need to follow up on?
I just have a concern with the users in that southern region being mandated to install new devices and incurring a financial hardship because of that, if that region did not meet the criteria for being a serious water management problem area. And just using the justification that we do need to be accountable and measure and monitor, I understand that. But if that's the case, then we should probably require every well owner in the state of Oregon to install flow meters.
Thanks, Rob, for your comment. We'll consider your comment, take note of it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on from the boundary, let's just talk about kind of what implementation is going to look like. So in my brain, I like to break things down into filing cabinets. So the filing cabinets that I see is there's the boundary, there's the deadline for reporting, there's the actual requirement for reporting, there's specifications that the flow meter needs to meet that will be installed, and then there is what happens if the flow meter is broken. So we just talked about the boundary, so let's go ahead into the deadline. Right, so right now in the rules, the deadline to install a flow meter is March 1, 2028 for all groundwater rights. The department can extend that deadline, but we will need to notify all groundwater users within 60 days of that March 1, 2028 deadline. Failure to install by March 1, the local water master can take control and regulate that well. So that's the deadline part. So it's March 1, everyone needs to, bottom line, by March 1, 2028, all wells need to have used wells need to have a flow meter installed. That deadline can be extended, and failure to do so would result in regulation and control of the well. In terms of reporting, we are requiring that you measure each month and then report annually each year your use. And we're reporting each month you need to report by December 31 each calendar year for the water year, which ended on September 31 of the same year. Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Sorry, Kelly, I didn't mean to interrupt you immediately, but
go ahead.
So I brought this up last time, and March 2028 will be coming up soon. Has the department done an analysis on the amount of funding and staff that will be needed for the cost share program for the 1,000 to 1,400 meters that might be needed, or the staff in order to use this for management purposes, so it can be something that the public can see?
I'm going to throw that to Jason there. Jason, you want to take that question?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for the question. We have been discussing internally what kind of requirements or what kind of staffing and resources we're going to need to be able to take that data and use it in a way that's beneficial and in a way that it will help manage the system. So those internal discussions are still ongoing, and we expect to have a plan to move forward on that here before too long.
Appreciate that. I'll probably bring it up once or twice more until we see the plan. So thanks.
Absolutely. Yep.
Mark, a question for you. So we did add a deadline extension. Is that not meeting? I guess, what are your, I'll open up to everybody. I want you to say you, but like, thoughts on the ability to extend the deadline?
Yeah, Kelly, just on all the comments that the department put in the swamp language, I was very supportive of. I think you guys were the extension, the installation requirements. I did appreciate the changes that you made, Kelly. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Okay, so back to specifications, right? So there are specifications that the flow meter needs to meet, defined in the rule language. We'll get a little bit we'll get into those specifications once we start talking about rule language. And then lastly, what happens when a flow meter is broken? So basically, once a flow meter is discovered to be broken, the user has 48 hours to report the broken flow meter to the local water master. They can appropriate water for 60 days on a well with a broken flow meter. And there are different ways that they can measure their use during that time. It could either be done through power meter or by the time of operation method. So that's kind of what implementation looks like, right? So March 1, 2028, got to install a flow meter. We can extend that deadline. Reporting is you have to measure each month and then report annually each year for the water year, previous water year, September 21. Specifications, the flow meter needs to meet certain specifications that are defined in rule. And if it is broken, flow meter is broken, they need to report to the local water master. They can appropriate water for 60 days and they can record their use through either power meter or the time of operation. So let's get into actual rule language now. So let's start with section 1. So we're just going to be following the rule language on the left-hand side of your screen here. This is what the previous rule language is. On the right is the current rule language. Any red language is new. Any crossed out red language is language that has been removed from the previous rule language. And how we're going to do this is I'm just going to read the right-hand side of the screen. We're going to talk about why we made changes, some of them substantial reasons, others just clerical reasons, and then talk about input that wasn't included in rule language and why we decided to do that. I heard, yeah, go ahead.
That was me, Kelly. Just to confirm, just when we say current rule language, you're talking about draft proposed. Would that be accurate?
Yes, I am talking about draft proposed. Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so section 1, having to do with the boundary, right? So the swamp boundary is defined in 695.12 and meets the groundwater conditions defined in OAR 690.85, section 21A and 690.85, 21F. Those are specific conditions that Rob was pointing out that a swamp needs to be happening in the area for a swamp designation to be allowed. If someone can put in chat from the OWRD group what those are specifically are, that'd be great. Thank you. So new language, OAR, right? It's more of a clerical. We just added that because in our rule writing guidance book from the DOJ, well, not DOJ, but said that we need to define Oregon administrative rules. So we had to put OAR there whenever we write rule numbers. So again, some of these are just clerical, it's just for readability. Section 1, are the rules clear and understandable? So the opening up to the group here, and is there any other feedback you want to provide on this section?
Question here in the room.
Sure.
Kelly, as we look at all these statutes and as folks try to digest the draft rules, will there be like quick links to the statutes that are there for people to be able to click on? So that it's not as arduous for him to have to go and copy and paste to look at it and, you know, I mean, even just it's the downfall of the government. We throw out a statute and expect people to all know what it means. I really think that, you know, the requirement the legislature has of bringing it down to an 8th grade level should be applied to all things legislatively, rulemaking, you name it. Because to me, you just went over some ORSs or whatever that apply to this, but you didn't tell us anything about it.
Yeah, I hear you. What I'm hearing from you is, okay, one, yes, I agree that we're trying to make this clear rule language. So maybe adjusting the rule language to not state this RAR, but specifically say meets these conditions and then write them out in rule would be good. As far as links in the rules, I don't really have any control of that because I have to file it to the bulletin, and the bulletin it has limited functionality, let's put it that way. As far as though the rule language that we could post on 512, absolutely, we can post links to those rules. But my takeaway though from your comment is that in this, going back to this section, and just tell me if I'm reading too much in this. Oh, I've clicked too much. I've got too excited. We should be, instead of defining OAR 690, specifically just laying out what those are in like a subsection. Is that something that would meet what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's this assumption that everybody should have to go and spend hours on end trying to find out what you just put there with a few numbers. And why not in this process, just state what it is?
Nope, I totally hear you. I agree. Yeah, I don't, even as a rule coordinator, I don't like when someone states something and I have to go find it and read that. Yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Thank you. So there was a comment under that current there is even if they could be linked so that somebody could go quickly look at it.
Yeah, well, I can't make promises on that because I don't know what the bulletin allows for linking. But yes, I hear what you're saying. No, thank you. Thank you for the comment. Appreciate it.
Kelly, there's a comment here from Rob in the chat. I could read that to you, or if you want to take a look at it.
Oh, thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. You did the research. So, Rob, do you want to read it actually, Brian? Rob
Sure.
has defined as pointed out what those OARs are. Okay, section A, groundwater decline in the area is of such magnitude. So this is 690-85-21A here. Groundwater decline in the area is of such magnitude that the aquifer does not recover annually. And for F, there are frequent occurrences of surface or groundwater shortages caused by use of water from streams or wells. Shortages may be evidenced by complaints from water rights holders, requests to regulate water use, degrading water quality, or failure to meet administrative restrictions or minimum stream flows.
Yeah, and tacking on to that, Ken shared, it'd be helpful if the department made a public documentation of their findings against the rule provisions as per Rob's language, separating supportive or not of the conditions in the basin and how they meet those requirements.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. Okay. Gonna keep going forward here. Any other comments on section 1? Okay, I'm gonna keep going to section 2 now. So this is the reporting, this is the deadline for reporting requirement. And then John, we'll get into ET here. We'll discuss why we not go through AT. So current rule, by no later than March 1, 2028, each groundwater right holder, well owner, or well operator shall properly install and thereafter properly maintain a totalizing flow meter on each well, listed as a point of appropriation on the valid water right. within the Harney Swampa boundary as defined in 695.12. Those are those rules. The department may extend the deadline as needed. If the deadline extended, the department will notify each groundwater right holder, well owner, a well operator at least 60 days before March 1, 2028. So we made a couple, 1 second. Oh, we'll get to you, John, in 1 sec. So we made a couple, the reason why we made changes. First, that deadline extension was to comments about the deadline should be on a rolling basis if the department is not ready to receive data or report out data. And then we kind of just move around language for clarity's sake. And then jumping over to other comments that we received on this section, and that's around ET. And then John, we can go to you. But so again, the general theme of ET is that the reported data is inaccurate and installation of the flow meter can be expensive. And ET is kind of a way to circumvent those two concerns. And upon internal discussion, we just think that ET is not currently meet the standards for reporting water rights, and it's not accurate enough. And in terms of regulation, we need to know what's coming out of a well, and ET only provides field data, field level. And then lastly, the SWAMPA statutes only authorize us to require flow meters, totalizing flow meters for reporting in water. So John, I know you're gonna have some comments, and I'm gonna throw it to you. And yeah, and then anyone else, please.
Gosh. Okay. The rules do allow for alternative measurement methods in a SWAMPA. It's not just metering and reporting. Certainly, if we're going to talk about accuracy, I would ask, okay, have we ever accurately measured and reported a basin in Oregon? And the answer is no. And the mere fact that ET is near real time, so a water master could actually do some regulation rather than looking at data from last irrigation season, and it's too late to regulate. Doesn't seem very smart to me. Sorry, I'm done.
No need to apologize.
So at this stage, Kelly, is it appropriate, whereas the department's kind of made a decision on this to shift any additional comments regarding this to the public comment period?
Well, no, I certainly don't want them to not give us comments, but we have made a decision that it's just we're not going to be using ET for SWAMPA. Jason, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I mean, I think you covered it pretty well there, Kelly. We need to be able to monitor well, and that's why, that's part of the reason, aside from other things that Kelly mentioned, so that we can monitor the water, right? We can't we can't effectively monitor the water right if we don't know where the water's coming from on the field. So that for me as a regulator is a big part of why I don't think we can effectively use ET.
Larissa,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Brian. I'm taking over your job. Sorry.
No, you're good. Larissa, go right ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to make a quick comment about ET. You were saying that it's not really accurate enough or not. Yeah, basically it was not accurate is what you're saying, but ET was used in your study, and it is used. So therefore the numbers that you predicted for water use were then used in the model. So the model numbers that you have are actually based off of a lot of ET. So I'm just thinking that if it was accurate enough to use to run models and regulate us and predict what our past use was, I'm just wondering, it seems little off to say it's not accurate, but we use in it for our studies and models. Thank you.
Rachel, I saw you come off camera. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And excuse me, Loretta or Larissa, sorry, apologies. Thank you for your comment. Well, first off, I'll say that I think that this is a bigger conversation and topic that's happening within the field, kind of internationally, even of the best uses of this data. So just sharing that we are at an interesting point in the development of this technology. To your question, though, directly about how can you, to put it more bluntly, how can you say it's accurate enough over here but not accurate enough over there? I'll just say that the applications themselves and the basically the areas that we are trying to quantify are really different between those two applications, and the actual number itself. So consumptive use is something, and not, I should say, ET is what is directly measured by remotely sensed ET data. We know the actual accuracy of that based on studies performed by others. The more we back into, and John, I know you're familiar with this, consumptive use or applied water, the more estimates get and assumptions we have to make in applying that data. And the smaller the scale, the more errors come into play with that data. So it really is a question of the scale and scope. I will say that the department has developed some applications guidance for this data. We shared out with some interested parties, I think at the beginning of February. We are close to finalizing that, and we'll happily send that out to this group. Here, I'm expecting it to be finalized by the end of the week. We'll send that out. It spells out in more detail the differences in kind of conditions in which the department thinks this information is accurate enough and is not. And a lot of it has to do with the scale, field size versus sub-basin, and the amount of estimating that has to happen to really apply that, get to the number we need for the decision that needs to be made. So Larissa, I'm happy to answer any other questions before we move over to John. I want to make sure that I was communicated clearly there.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Kelly, back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, we can maybe do one more comment, John, on this, and then it sounds like with some more data coming out, if appropriate, we could use that to have further discussion a little bit further down the line once there's some more information, if that's warranted. But maybe we'll do one more comment on this, so then move on, so we can make sure we have time to get to all these other sections. John, go right ahead.
Yeah, and this is probably directed to Rachel. I'm thrilled to hear that there's some more data coming out. Rachel, my question to you is, at least when I envision OpenET for measurement and reporting, I envision documenting the type irrigation at each specific field. Lisa, Mesa, drag lines, whatever, so we can get the efficiency number as accurate as possible rather than a sub-basin level. Am I understanding that correctly? That field level would get that accuracy pretty good?
John, Jenks, thanks for that question. This is really where I think there just hasn't been enough work done across the state. And when we have looked at studies comparing metered data with measured data, there's been a lot of variation in the accuracy of that information, more than we're comfortable accepting at this time. And to Jason's point, it gets really complicated to get down to how much water was pumped from an individual well level. So at a field scale, John, we've got a better shot at it. At the individual well level, we have not seen a way to get around metering from that that perspective. And from a capacity perspective too, we have, one person working in water use reporting in the department right now. And so we are quite capacity limited in that space to act rapidly on applying that data. We are, importantly, working with OSU Extension. They're leading a lot of these efforts to really dig into these questions, but that work hasn't even begun at this point. So it's honestly too early, and there's a bit too much uncertainty for us to be comfortable using it in the regulatory context at this time. And
Okay,
John, I'm happy to
just-
also follow up with you outside of this process too, if you want to talk more about. I know you have you've sent Aaron, I think, some great questions that we owe you a response on.
Well, and if we're trying to hit a PTW for a sub area, what difference does it make which well it comes from? We're really looking at the PTW.
For that, I want to lean on Jason to respond to that, actually. Thanks, John, for that question.
Yeah, and I guess I want to avoid getting ourselves down too much of a rabbit trail. I know this is important, and this is something that that there's some interest in. I guess I would propose that maybe we can put a pin in it so that we ensure that we are able to get to these other sections in our time we have here this morning.
That sounds good, Brian. I'm happy to follow up, John, on that question.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I'm pretty sure not everybody in the meeting was on some of the email exchanges that John had with the department and ET. So I'm a big supporter of ET. I do support Larissa's comments that, the ET evaluation that was used in this study is one of the 1/6 of the models that are using OpenET. I still think as we work through this, there should be an alternative path for measuring. I still think that as we work through this, that it could be very beneficial for the community and the department to work with some growers that'll put on real-time metering for the next couple of years and cross-check that with OpenET. So hopefully we can all better understand the accuracy at the field level and maybe be able to transition there. And also I think it would help with the understanding that, some of the older meters, seeing how we're not listing the type of meter that needs to be used. The pulse meters seem to be a lot more accurate in the sand and harsh conditions that some of our wells do. The impeller meters seem to wear out. And therefore, I would very much consider sometimes the accuracy as they go for a couple of years that ET could be used to cross-check those two. I know that's a lot to get in these rules, but I want to continue and thank John for his continued advocacy of this, because this is the direction we need to go. Do we get there by 2028? Probably not, but hopefully in the future we can.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mark. Okay, Kelly, take it away.
All right. So specific questions, I remember, so we were talking about deadline, March 21, 28, and then we can extend that deadline, but we need to notify 60 days in advance of the March 1 deadline. Specific questions for you, is 60 days an adequate time to notify? Are the rules, again, are the rules clear and understandable? And is there any other feedback you want to provide on this section? Kristen, I hear your comment. We've referenced the rule within the rule again, so we're working on not doing that for clarity's sake, but any other comments?
Yeah, I guess I'll put out there, Kelly, these are sort of, the first couple are yes, no questions. We don't necessarily need a poll on this, but if you have concerns about 60 days or the clarity of the rules, please share that.
I have one other comment at large, just with this whole conversation that I'd like to throw out there. As we look at the use of state funds, as we look at the use of funds on the producer's end, if the same amount of money was invested into developing ET, because we're talking into, 3-point-some-odd million, and then you're trying to take what happens in the Harney Basin and apply it statewide, what is a better use of funds, to go down the road of replacing meters every couple of years? Or to go down the road of moving forward as a state with investing these funds into something that is a long-term solution for the state, not a short-term solution for a basin?
Excellent. Thank you. That's yeah, great feedback.
Okay, so getting on to section 3 here. This is a new section. We split up the old previous section 2 into 2 sections for readability. So section 3 here, totalizing flow meters shall be properly installed according to manufacturer specifications and must meet the specifications in subsection 5. And then we added a subsection A here. Groundwater wells that are regulated off do not require installing a totalizing flow meter. Reason for change. So we heard comments on that exceptions for groundwater users. And so we feel that it is fair that if a groundwater user is regulated off, then they should not be required to install a flow meter. And again, we just split this section 2 up into 2 different sections for readability. And so in terms of input, again, same thing. Are they clear? Are they understandable? Is there any other feedback you want to provide on this?
Anyone?
Okay. And well, not again, this is my first time. If any of you have any other comments that just aren't coming to you now, please feel free to write to me or give me a call. Thank you. Okay, on to section 4 here. I'm going to start going a little bit faster now because we need to get to classification. So section 4, no changes to this particular section. Totalizing flow meters and the methods of flow meter installation may be subject to the approval by the department staff. Once installed, totalizing flow meters must be maintained in good working order. Department staff shall have reasonable access to the totalizing flow meters upon request pursuant to RS 537.780. Again, we're referencing a rule there, so we're going to have to make some clarity, but thank you. Again, no changes made to this section. Are the rules clear and understandable? Or is there any other feedback you want to talk about in this section?
Kristen?
So this is Kristen. Is there, within the rules, where does the cost sharing get defined? Is it in the rules there will be cost sharing for the flow meters? Is it a one-time deal? What if there's problems with it and further costs are incurred? Or just over time due to sand in the system, they wear out? Like, where does all that lie in this process of insurance that there will be support from the state to implement this large of a cost?
Jason, I have some thoughts, but do you want to add anything?
I'm not sure I caught all of that, Kristen. I apologize. I don't know if it's my internet or what, but it broke up a bit.
Well, what I'm asking is, where does it state, or where will it state the cost sharing that the state will do in this process? It's defining that they'll be installed, that they'll meet certain qualifications, that they'll be in good working order. What defines good working order is where will that language be? Is that manufacturer guidelines? Is that the producer can make that call whether it's in good working order or not? And is it a one-time cost share? Or if there's problems incurred from a producer with this installation process, does the cost share continue till the problem's resolved? If there's places where meters wear out faster, is there going to be any additional cost share as further meters are needed? You know, where does that part of all this process lie?
Sure, and that's kind of the separate proper process within or a lot of that is a separate process within the cost share program. It's not just a one-time thing. If a meter goes out and we continue to need, you know, that data, you can still qualify for additional cost share through that program if the meter, you know, goes out, fails, or whatever, breaks. As far as the quality of the data that the meter is gathering, or whether or not, who makes the determination on whether the meter is no longer accurate enough. Typically that is a water master call, but you know, if a landowner clearly sees that a meter is not operating properly, it's, you know, clearly broken, you know, they can still apply for that funding to get it replaced, so we get a proper meter in place. I think we're, you know, that program is fairly broad at this point, you know, so there's not really any hard restrictions on the amount of times you can apply, or it is a one-time for that particular meter. It is a one-time cost share. So how it operates is somebody applies for cost share. They usually have an estimate of the cost of the meter and the cost of installation. They send that in, and then we reimburse them for the appropriate percentage of that meter and installation. And typically it can be up to 75% of that cost. Typically, what we've done in the past is we paid for the meters, and then the landowner would pay for the installation, but we've also paid for some of the installation in a lot of cases as well.
So if there's been variance in whether you participated in some of the actual installation, you know, obviously with this scale of installation that will have to occur and the amount of cost of the producer, you know, that would be nice to be known on the front end as people are entering into this, whether that will be a part of it. If it has been done in the past, obviously, it would be nice to have it defined somewhere that that is going to be an option for this basin and for producers. But to have unknowns, and when you say up to, I really have been challenged by agencies that say up to, when you try to work with producers in incentivizing them to participate in a program, when the word up to is part of that language.
Okay, well, and the reason we say up to in this case is a lot of times we have commitments from landowners that says, I'll pay for the installation, or I will install it myself. And so we'll buy the meter. Meter might be 60% of the total cost. And the landowner agrees that they're going to install it. You know, they're not going to install 3/4 of it and then leave the rest up to the state. So they, you know, they do the full installation, and that might end up being more than 25% of the cost, you know, based on the estimate. What we have done recently, I've seen, is we can provide a, you know, if the landowner can give us a cost estimate, we can provide a cost share form that says, here's what we will pay for of that, and then the landowner can decide if that's, you know, if that works for them, that agreement, and then, you know, we can work on that contract.
And yeah.
Mark?
It looks like Rachel provided for everyone's reference the current water measurement cost share guidance PDF and the link to that.
Mark has his hand up. Mark, you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Kelly. So just I also agree with Kristen that it'd be nice somehow in the rules to make sure that there's an obligation for the state to continue to fund the cost share measurement program. Because I mean, it's around 1,400 meters that'll be required. The average cost lately to put a meter in Harney Basin that use a cost share program is about $2,900 to $3,400. Currently, there's $1 million in the cost share fund. The governor's requested base budget is currently only $116,000 for the next biennium. So this would be good, and I hope that when Jason and folks are working through this plan, that's this type of stuff that we'll understand, and hopefully we can codify it someplace.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on here. We're a little bit behind schedule, but that's okay. Have great conversations. Getting into section 5, this is the reporting requirement. So the groundwater right holder, well owner, or well operator shall keep a complete record of the volume of water appropriated each month. The groundwater right holder, well owner, or well operator shall submit annually a report that includes water use measurements to the department by December 31 of each calendar year for the water year which ended September 30th of the same year. Reports shall be submitted using a form developed and maintained by the department. And then subsection A here, again, groundwater wells regulated off do not need to report use. Mark, is that a legacy hand or do you have a question or comment?
Legacy.
Okay. So we made some changes, as you can see with the red language. So we had some comments there. Previous language was written for requiring reporting of the preceding year and it should be for the current year. So we corrected that language. And then we added subsection 5A here just to clarify that regulated groundwater users do not need to report. Tim, you came off.
Yeah.
Did
Kelly,
did I poke up
wanted
your
to-
ears?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up that I'm still not happy with the way the language is written, and we may make a change there because the way it's written currently, it sounds like we want you to just report the use from October 31 of the previous year through September 30th of the current year. So we would end up not getting October's use until a year and a year and 3 months after it was actually incurred. And so we may want to change that to be a different cutoff there. And then we've got to rethink the requirement as it relates to the year-round rights. So if they're not just the rights that are required or that are allowed to irrigate during irrigation season, water users who can use water year-round, we need to think that one through again. So I just want to call that out for the RAC that I don't think we're still quite happy with that language.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, and so in terms of the requirement, we had a comment around why aren't we requiring more than annual reporting? Basically, what it comes down to is that in terms of regulatory perspective, we just need to know measurements that are reported well, we didn't know what it looks like annually, and we can keep track of users that are either coming to the limit or past their limit. Jason, you're more of the regulatory guy, though. Do you want to add context to that?
I think you hit it, Kelly. I mean, we need to know on the ground, where we are from each well so we can regulate, make sure that those wells are, within the limits of the water right. And that's a big part for us out there on the ground.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Jason. So
Question here in the room.
Sure.
So Jason, that means if we use 2 acre feet in 2024, and can we bank the water and use it in the following year, or does that water belong to the state?
If you don't use your water right is only valid through a single irrigation season. So
Okay, so you can't bank and care.
No, sir.
Okay,
What was your other question?
nothing, it's fine.
Okay. Any input on section 5 about are they clear, understandable? Is there any other feedback? Okay, section 6, we're getting into the specifications here. For time, I won't read any language that has not changed. So section 6 here, no rule change to these specific specifications. I'm going to keep going, no changes here. Section D here, we did make a minor change. So as written, it was we were requiring a flow meter to be installed that has capacity for exactly the water right. That was really unattentivenely restrictive. So we had to add a minimum here. Going forward here, sections F and G, has some more significant changes. So the section F, the totalizing flow meters shall be installed in accordance with all manufacturer specifications. There should be no turnouts or diversions between the well and the flow meter. And then we move this language around. The flow meter shall be installed not less than 5 pipe diameters downstream from any valve, elbow, or any obstructions. The reason why we changed this language, removed this language, is that we received comments that the pulse meters, flow meters are getting better and better, and manufacturers might have a specific requirement, and this could go against that requirement. So we removed that language. And then for G here, that you have to install a flow meter no more than 100 feet away from the wellhead. We've heard comments that some systems just can't meet that 100 feet requirement. So we've added some flexibility to get a approval from the water master. I just went through the changes here. So anything on this subsection 6, any comments? Okay. Going forward to subsection 7 here. Sorry, section 7, not subsection. Minor change. We've added the word water just for clarity's sake. This is language on what you'll need to do if a flow meter is broken. That's report in 48 hours to the local water master. It's just for clarity, we're adding water. Anything on section 7, apologize for going fast. We really need to get the classification. And of course, if you have any comments that you think of, please give me a call or shoot me an email. Okay. Moving on here, section 8. This is, while the flow meter is broken, the water user shall use other methods of reporting as defined under OER 690-85-15-5 A through C. We'll make sure to clarify what that means in rule specifically. Until the flow meter is replaced or repaired, the water user shall keep the monthly data and mail the data to the local water master. Originally, this language was to the department. We aligned it with the previous section 7, where you had to report your flow meter is broken to a local water master. And then we felt like we should also be consistent and just report the data if requested to a local water master as well. That's the reason for the change there. Any comments on that section? Okay. Getting over here to section 9, minor change. We just changed March 1, 2028 to the deadline to give us, just to align with our section 2 deadline section, just in case we do decide to postpone the date, March 1, 2028 requirement. Section 10, any comments on section 9 here? Okay, great. Section 10, no changes. This is just and we'll need to work on this language here, Jason. This is just our statutory authority for assessing civil penalties, and no changes or comments were received on that. So we're going to just keep going here. This is the high level again. We talked about this, and we're going to keep going. If there's any more feedback that you want to provide for the swamp or rule language, please get in contact with anyone on the 512 team. Send us an email. Just let us know. Thank you. But we need to get to Brian. I think maybe we do classification and then do public comment after that.
Yeah.
Are people okay with that? Yeah.
Chris Hall indicated email that he'd prefer to do it after at the conclusion. And is there anybody else from the public here that anticipates and would like to provide public comment? And would you be good with doing it at the end? So Ken, I see that. Do you have a preference to do it now or to do it at the end?
I have a very brief comment for now would be best for me.
Okay, let's just hold that for 1 second, and then let me just double check. Anybody else? Jerry, preference for now or later?
Either works.
Okay, let's do it at the end. Anybody else interested in providing comment? Okay, so we'll do Jerry and Chris at the conclusion if you plan on sticking around for the entirety of the meeting. Ken, if you'd like to provide a comment now, I'll give you the floor to do that. Just a reminder for everyone that does provide comment, the department or the RAC is not going to respond to any questions at this time. We'll capture them and then get back with you later. So just anticipate that we won't be into a dialogue around any public comments at this time. So Ken, go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My comment is on section 3, where you carve out a provision for not metering those that will be regulated off. I presume that's based on the assumption that regulations will be in place by March of 28 and people will know who's regulated off and who's not. Also, the other question is, how are you going to implement this if you're implementing regulations on a 6-year rolling basis with reductions each 6 years? That language doesn't really help figure out how that might be implemented. So you might think about alternative language that would anticipate adjusting the measurement with the curtailment schedule that you've talked about previously. Thank you for the opportunity to come.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, so we'll have 3 comments, looks like, at the end. Chris, Jerry, and we have 1 at the room at High Desert Partnership. So Kelly,
Okay,
move on to the next one.
Yeah, let's get the classification rule language here. Do you want to run through this, Brian? Or
Just kind of same drill as before. This is draft proposed language, so gathering your feedback for department consideration is appreciated.
All right, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with kind of the general theme of comments. We last talked about classification really in RAC 7 and 8, and as I have read it, there were 2 kind of general themes. There was one around the classification boundary, which I'll show you in the next slide. We got a recommendation from the RAC to set the classification the same as the SWAPA boundary. And then there were comments around, allowed uses, what uses that we should classify for within the classification boundary. And so those were 1, allow for community wells to be drilled within the classification boundary, allowing for limited license for construction projects or like solar projects is what we heard. And then also allowing classifying use for the CREP program. Those were kind of the general themes that we heard. And then looking to get more comments here today as well. So again, classification boundary. Oh, John, please.
As far as that classification, and correct me if I'm not understanding it correct, but it looks like it's only going to allow exempt uses. I very much appreciate you mentioning limited licenses for things like solar construction or road construction. Are we going to regulate back everything, or are we going to classify some uses like municipal or commercial that might support other industries other than ag that would be helpful for this community?
John, it'd be great if you have some ideas of what we should classify for, it'd be good. We'll talk about, right now it's just exempt uses. We have written language in exempt uses in geothermal because we really haven't had a lot of space to talk about it. So that's the language we threw in. And today I'm really hoping to gather comments like, well, you should be thinking about these uses. So if once we get to that language, if you have some ideas, it'd be great to hear. And then Jason, anything to add there?
No, Kelly, I agree with that. Be happy to hear from any suggestions.
Yep, and then we'll explore like the limited license and the community wells. We've done some homework on how we can do that, if we can do that, and we'll let you guys know what we found. So anyways, Rob, go ahead.
John's comments kind of made me think of this, and I was going to ask it at a different time, but because I am coming into this process relatively new. Do you guys have a copy of the latest comprehensive plan for Harney County to look at the land uses that are outlined in that and try to maintain some consistency?
We, not to my knowledge, Jason, or team, have you guys seen that?
I don't know if Alexandria is still here. She may have a comment on that. We'll be able to answer that better than I can.
Popcorn. Rob, can you send it? I don't know if we've seen that. If you could send it over to us, that'd be great.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. So high level, what implementation looks like, right? So we are going to define the classification boundary. Within that boundary, there's going to be only certain types of allowed uses of water within that boundary. And then within the rule language, we talk about what allowed uses are allowed within that. What type of water, like what uses are allowed within the classification boundary? That was a lot of allowed uses in that sentence. Excuse me. Yeah, John, go ahead.
Does that mean it's allowed for new water right applications, or what exactly does that mean? I mean, if I do a transfer from irrigation to municipal, municipal isn't listed, so is it not allowed?
Yeah, so John, this is to be really clear, this is for new applications only. So this is how the department assesses new applications.
Okay.
When we say we're classifying for exempt groundwater use only or geothermal up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, those are the two uses that you could apply for a permit under. So in that case, you don't need a permit for the exempt uses. For geothermal, you'd have to apply for a non-consumptive geothermal permit, and those are the only two that would be allowed within this boundary.
Thank you.
Okay, classification boundary. It is the same, the RAC we discussed in 6 and 7, and the RAC recommended setting the classification boundary as the swap boundary for consistency's sake. So again, that's anything within that boundary. It's for new water rights, and so it's classifying what new water rights could be applied for, as Tim pointed out. Thank you, Tim. So in terms of, I'm just going to skip. So we've heard, again, relevant input on this conversation, right? Just to jog our memories. So 7 and 8, we had a conversation around classification boundary, and we got a recommendation around this classification to set the classification boundary as the swap boundary. Just to go back, as this guy right here, right? So it is the groundwater study area and then parts of Grant County around the Seneca. And then so the input that I'm looking for are basically, we're done with the classification boundary. We've got an agreement, but as the rules are written, are they clear? So the rules are the groundwater classification boundary is defined as the Harney Basin within the Malheur Lake Basin and within the portions of the Grant and Harney counties as shown in Exhibit X. Okay, I'm going to move on here. Tim, did you come off mute, or am I seeing?
I think you're okay to keep going, Kelly.
Okay, all right. So let's go into section 1 here. So within our classification boundary, we don't need to talk a lot about this. This is legacy language, and this is applied for the Malheur Lake Basin, which includes many different counties. We don't want to make a change to this because it could really make a mess. And if we are making changes, we're going to have to expand the RAC to those who might be affected to the classification changes. So this is just legacy language. We're going to leave it as is in the rules. So we're not really looking for input there. What we are looking for input, though, is what uses should be allowed in this classification boundary, right? So the groundwater classification boundary defined in OAR 690-512, Section 4 is classified for statutory exempt groundwater uses as specified in ORS 537.545, and non-consumptive geothermal uses below 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's what right now what we're thinking for allowed uses. So we have looked into other uses, right? And again, we received comments on allowing for limited license, community wells, and classifying uses for CREP. And we've kind of explored those options, and we can talk through why we can't, well, I'm just gonna say why we can't do these three, or why we've explored the option how we can classify these, is what I should say. So allowing for community wells, we were looking into allowing kind of a temporary transfer of a groundwater right to a community well. And the issue that we are running through is within the transfer statutes, it says that temporary transfers do not allow a change of character of use. So meaning if we were to temporarily transfer an irrigation right, a groundwater right, it cannot be changed to a municipal right. Jason, am I capturing that?
Yeah, we cannot change the character of use in a temporary transfer with the current statute.
So the only way for a community well to happen is going to have to go through the permanent transfers, a permanent transfer to a community well, for a community well.
Correct.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just letting process. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, and I know we discussed this before on the temporary transfer in the swamp and critical groundwater designation. The other one I get concerned about is season of use. So we're going to change an irrigation right, and so is that also permanent transfer, Jason, or where can we word this in to the exception process or the classification process?
Yeah, the season of use would have to be, I mean, we can transfer irrigation rights. My understanding is we can transfer irrigation rights to other types of uses under the permanent transfer. And we have to consider a different season of use for those. So, it would be basically prorated over that time period. And I think, let's see, what was your second part of that question, Mark? I want to be clear on my answer here.
Yeah, I just don't know if, I mean, we've had a lot of loose conversations, but is there any way in maybe in the rules that we could actually clarify that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, there may be a way we'd have to, do like a carve out in the rules for that specific use. And that would take a portion of basically the PTW for that sub area and reserve it for those other uses. That may be a possibility, unless one of the rest of the team here wants to slap me for that comment, but I think that's correct.
I want to slap you generally, Jason. Kidding.
Yes, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Speaking to Mark's original question about the change in the season of use, we have been working internally on a policy document. I don't remember if that has gone from draft to official yet, but it speaks specifically to how the department will handle changes in season of use on transfer applications. So I personally don't see any issues with changing the season of use on a right in the Harney Basin due to the lack of immediate, like same season sort of surface water impacts that we see in other basins. And so what we've been discussing internally is making that, essentially an internal management directive for when reviewing transfer applications that want to change the season of use. And as Jason said, we would want to prorate that use so that the total quantity of water that could be used does not increase in the right. That would be enlargement. But that you could use the water for the for the full year rather than just the irrigation season. The challenge with making a carve out specifically for other rights is that consumes part of the PTW and doesn't make it available for use. The other challenge is, with limited licenses, et cetera, or even a new application, if you allow a new application, is that new application gets the most junior priority date. And so in an area where curtailment is actively ongoing of more senior rights, we would need, that new application would basically be immediately invalidated, unless we were gonna somehow modify the prior appropriation system through rule, and we haven't thought that through at all. So.
Be great if we maybe did, Tim, and you guys could propose some language we could look at, just to be straight. On the memo concerns me. If it's based in rules, then it probably avoids some of the procedural hurdles if some people oppose it as we work through in the future.
So to be clear, which language are you specifically talking about?
I would like to see potential language on both, Tim, because I guess I'm not very clear on either one. I mean, I think it's Ken barely put in the chat. I mean, it's, I think, on a more simple line than you guys do. But if you have a voluntary cancellation of a PTW, could that be used for a different use than what the priority date would be, and then also the season of use? So,
yeah. So I guess our perspective on that, Mark, is that if you're going to do a voluntary cancellation of a right, why not just transfer that right and use that right's water, rather than go through rather than design complicated rules that require us to voluntarily cancel a right and then give that right a junior priority date and then protect that right with a junior priority date from curtailment.
I'll have to think through it, get back to you, Tim.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, moving forward, let's talk about limit license here. So we did look into allowing for limited license for construction. The issue that we ran in with limited license is that we need to make a determination if there is water available, and we are designating a critical groundwater area. So we feel that that determination would not be made, and so just limited license cannot be done at this point. Jason, anything to add there?
Yeah, we have to have, water available for a limited license, and, we would have a, essentially a priority date that we'd have to immediately shut off.
Thank you. Yes, they would be the most junior in the area, and when regulation happens, then it would be shut off. And then lastly, for CREP here, we do not need to classify use for CREP, how we're handling CREP. Actually, you know what, Jason, you are the CREP person. Why don't you talk about how CREP is being handled in terms of water use?
Okay, yeah, so the way we are currently thinking with regard to CREP, this is up to Farm Service Agency really, to determine whether or not there needs to be a cover crop planted on land that's participating in CREP. If there is a cover crop required under the CREP contract, then in order to get that crop established, what we're thinking right now is we would have to have like a delayed cancellation process. So that water right would not actually be canceled at the signing of the CREP contract, but the cancellation order would have a delayed date upon which that right would be canceled, so that user could actually use some of that water for a short time to establish the crop under CREP, and then their right would be canceled after that. So far, that's really the only option that we've seen we think will work with CREP in that case. So that's something that we're continuing to look at potential options for folks that might need to use some water to establish that cover crop, especially after curtailment begins, or after we would need to regulate that user off if that's a right that we would need to regulate off in the future. So that's where we're at on the prep side of things. Hopefully that was somewhat clear, but we're still looking at options for that too.
Thanks, Jason. So this is where I kind of want to, those are the uses that we explored and found some challenges around. But I kind of want to open it up to the group now. John, you had I think you had some suggestions, but what uses should we be looking at to classify for? Because right now it's geothermal under 250 degrees Fahrenheit, non-consumptive geothermal, and exempt uses. I know it's kind of a big question, and we can continue having this conversation. This isn't the last time.
Yeah, Kelly, so we're going to review this again on our April agenda. Is that accurate? Or no? Or is it May?
I think it would probably be best if we review it in the April agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of giving people a framework, kind of if you want to chew on this, you can email Kelly or come to the April meeting with some ideas. It'd probably be helpful, Kelly, I imagine, if you got those in email beforehand so that then the department can kind of be prepared to have a conversation around them and do some research. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands right now, so hopefully something people can sit with, and I'll get some feedback back to Kelly regarding.
Okay, I think we can go to public comment right now and then just talk about what our next steps are and wrap up the meeting.
Okay. So I got 3 public comments right now, Chris, Jerry, and one in the room at High Desert Partnership. Anybody else here from the public interested in providing comment? Go ahead and raise your hand and let me know. Okay, so we'll go to public comment now. Again, as I stated, with public comment, this is an opportunity for those that have been observing to provide feedback to the RAC and to the department regarding what's been presented here, and ask questions, with knowing that we won't get into a dialogue or respond to questions at this time, because the RAC and the department may not be prepared to answer those questions. But and considering time, we want to be able to move through this, but get back to you with the answers if you did have questions. So with that, if those commenting could keep their comments to 2 to 3 minutes, that would be appreciated. Give everybody that would like to provide comment adequate time, and also get us out of here at the time that you committed to this meeting. So let's go ahead and begin with Christopher Hall. Chris, you can unmute yourself and begin.
He's going to submit comment in writing, Bryant. So
okay.
We've got 2 comments right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Jerry, you'd like to go.
So I'll apologize in advance if this comment's based on a misunderstanding. My thought is it appears that if people did not use water under certain scenarios, they do not need to report their water use, even if it's 0 use. And it seems to me that whether or not they did or did not use water, you still want to know, even if they did not use water, and have that reported, just for completeness sake and to avoid any ambiguities. If there's, if somebody's coming back to look at the data, and just to remove any uncertainty that in fact water was not used, that you have some kind of a record to document that, as opposed to, well, did this person just fail to report versus that there was not water used. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, Brenda, I'll turn it over to you in the room there for the commenter to just please state your name when you begin.
Kurt Blackburn. So I was just wondering, when does the RAC or you guys plan on doing the PTW and the subzones and stuff like that, presenting that, so we know as a community what direction we're going on there?
Okay, thank you, Kurt. I think we're going to move on to next steps here, so hopefully some of those questions get answered with the kind of the timetable moving forward.
Cause I was just wondering if you guys have already done that and we're gonna be talking about. So my understanding is then whatever fiscal impact that is not gonna be due till April 2nd. It's not in consideration. You're not considering any fiscal impact to our community or anything like that. So that's my understanding. If you have already got the subzones and everything done, what you're gonna present. You don't care about the community, period. The other thing is on the 2,215 degree temperature for anything above that. Why is there a limit? Is there because if there's green power or hydro or anything like that, or somebody wants to do for power, that would just totally eliminate any other resource in our community to do that. And those are just my comments and questions.
Great. Thank you for providing those, and department will capture those and get back with us. Okay, Kelly.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Let's get into next steps, but I am actually going to, give me a second. I am going to roll us back to talk about what topics we're going to talk about. So our next meeting is April 2nd, April 2nd at the Harney County Community Center from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we'll be talking about our management scenario, and that includes the PTW and percentage reductions that we anticipate per sub area. And the physical impact, it will be considering those things. So we're going to be talking about the management scenario. We're going to be presenting our critical ground area rule language, which encapsulates all of the management scenario. So that's adaptive management, implementation, the sub areas, the PTWs. So that would be all within the rule language. Again, when I say rule language, it's not final rule language. This is just our initial punch at it, and we would like more input along the way, right? And then we'll also be talking about the physical impact. So that's what we plan on doing April 2nd meeting. So that's going to be April 2nd again, 2025. We know it's 2025 at the Harney County Meeting Center from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then our following meeting is going to be, well, we're just going to stick with that for right now. And then in terms of discussion groups, I know we have Bobby on the line here, but is there anything between now and the April meeting that we should have a discussion group on?
I don't think, but I think Bobby might have had to drop off, so I don't
Okay.
see him on the
We
list
can
right now, but we can
document, yeah.
capture it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I think everybody that's been participating in those or would like to has been getting emails from Bobby, and you can always reply to him directly as well. Okay.
And yeah, so, and there's in terms of the 250 degree permit, well, for geothermal consumptive use, we are only authorized to regulate at 250 degrees. Anything above that is Dogami's regulation range authority. So that's where that 250 comes from. And Tim answered that in the chat. Thanks, Tim. Okay, that's all we got for today. So thank you for your time. We'll meet again April 2nd. Again, if there are we'll talk about classification. So if there are any uses that you can think of from now until April 2nd, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. And then we can discuss further on the classification April 2nd, as well as SWAMPA. If there's something that you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel like, oh, that's something we should consider, please let me know. I appreciate all your time. When should they have them by Harmon? That's a good question. If we want to do, we won't discuss SWAMPA next meeting, but classification, if you can guys give us some suggestions by, let's say we're trying to get all the materials out by March 21. So if we can get it by March 17th, any suggestions, then we can look at those. So that'll be on Monday. So thank you all for your time, Brian. I'll pass it over to you to close the meeting, or?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I think you said it all as far as next steps. Apologize, it took a little time to get the meeting summary out from our last RAC meeting, so you should be seeing that here soon, and we'll get this one turned around from this meeting here a little more quickly.
Yep.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you in April.
Thank you, everybody.